David charges down the street and pushes his way inside the cafe. Scanning the room, he doesn't see Tristan or his party. He yells at a waitress from across the room, and to his horror, she tells him Tristan already left for the airport. Her words stun him like a slap in the face. He's too late, and his whole world is spinning out of control. He takes a moment to gather himself. Then he decides and rushes out into the street, screaming wildly for a taxi. A taxi pulls to the curb. The driver looks at David, hesitates, then starts the meter and steps on the gas. Next thing David realizes, he's bolting down the highway, rehearsing what he's going to say to Tristan. He struggles with ideas and words, and feels nothing he comes up with is good enough. The taxi pulls up to the sliding glass doors of the airport, and David vaults out. The driver yells at him. He returns to pay him, and then rushes through the automated doors into a bustling open area. He quickly regards a monitor displaying flight departures, sees one flight leaving for New York, rushes through the terminal, but security stops him in his tracks. Can't pass without a boarding pass. David stares at him, trying to catch his breath as he processes everything at once. He tries to explain his situation, but the brute won't budge, not even an inch. David turns back and rushes to the check-in counter. He buys a business class ticket on the plane to New York. Then he runs back and passes through security. He runs faster and faster, and he's nearly there. He's going to do this. He's really going to do this. Suddenly, he smashes into an older man carting luggage who looks like his father with his salt and pepper hair and chiseled jaw. He tumbles over the ground as fear hits him like a fist, knocking the breath out of him for a moment. Just a moment. In the chaos, he notices Tristan's note on the ground. He grabs it, holds it, remembers. The man yells at David to be careful, but that's the last thing David wants to do right now, as he puts the note back into his pocket and clambers over a pile of luggage and charges away. Within moments, he sees the gate, sees Tristan, laughing with his partner, happy. He freezes in his tracks. Guilt smashes down on him like a brick wall, pushing and squeezing his insides into something awful. At once, everything begins to spin as he realizes he's going to be sick. David turns on his heels, rushes to the bathroom with a hand over his mouth, and blasts through a stall to purge his stomach. Then he hobbles out and washes gunk off his face, and feels like the most selfish person in the world. His busted and swollen face sags with the sudden realization that if he loves Tristan, if he truly loves Tristan, he will let him go. Rick got into his head, and he's drunk. That's all this is about. All he needs to do right now is be happy for Tristan. To be happy for him, and go home and sleep this crazy night off. David walks away from Gate 72 with his head in a whirlwind. He knows he isn't thinking straight, and that it's selfish to pull Tristan back into his mess. He made his bed, and now he has to fucking lie in it. David approaches the security gate, and his heart clenches like a vice. It's impossible to move. Something bigger than his doubt, his guilt and his fear won't allow him to take another step. His hand plunges into his pocket, and he turns the note over and over. Then, in a blazing flash, details of their struggle come back to him. How could he let him go? The one whose voice was the only peace he had ever known, whose laugh was the only joy he had ever experienced, whose every breath filled him with life, and whose every word challenged him to be a better man. How could he leave without even trying, without showing him that he was, in the end, willing to do whatever it took for what they had? David realizes that if he doesn't seize this moment, he'll never know, and the regret alone would destroy him. Tristan doesn't just make him whole, he makes him real. and no one has ever had that effect on him. Suddenly, he comes alive, and turns, and fucking runs. I don't know what I'll say, but I'll say something, anything. I'll say whatever comes to mind, maybe those 3 words from his favorite movie. Energy charges through David like a bolt of lightning, making him faster, stronger, and somewhat confident, even though he has no idea what he's going to say or do. He just runs, and his run becomes a stumbling sprint as he sees Tristan with his partner, about to board. His mouth opens in a silent scream as he stumbles and falls on his face. David? Is that you? Tristan grabs David's hand and helps him to his feet. David straightens himself and tries to look presentable despite the busted face and the mingled odor of ale, gunk, and cologne. He smells like someone puked on a bed of flowers, and he knows it. But he forgets how he looks and smells as he tries to stop his hands from shaking. He takes a deep breath, exhales, and calms himself. Then he reaches out and holds Tristan's hands firmly. Words thicken like cement in his throat, and nothing clever or poetic comes to mind. He tries to remember the line from the movie without success. Tristan's partner steps forward, but Tristan gestures for him to be patient as he pulls David aside. What's wrong, David? What the hell happened to you? David wants to tell Tristan he means the world to him. He wants to say, I love you, but instead he says, no more bullshit. Tristan mimes the words slowly, trying to understand. David says them in a whisper, again and again, as he desperately waits for Tristan to say something, anything. Tristan says nothing, but his eyes mist, and he suddenly looks happy and sad and very confused at the same time. In the rainy darkness of night, David staggers down a street he doesn't recognize, drenched, cold, singing some half-remembered folk song. The last thing he expected was a fairy tale ending, and of course he understands Tristan needs time to think things through. How much time? Hopefully not much. Just enough for him to step off the plane and call him to say, as you wish. Shit. Now he remembers. At exactly the wrong moment. David smirks. Doesn't matter. He's never felt so good, so free, so euphoric in his life. He lets the feeling flow past him like a gentle breeze and gets the sense that he's been born again, or born for the first time, and that before this night he had merely existed as a cardboard cutout, with little self-awareness except for the fear that had come to rule his life. His hope is that when Tristan's plane lands, he will receive a phone call asking him to be on the next plane out, if that is he ever finds his wallet. Oh, no matter. If he can walk home from the airport, he can swim across the pond. He laughs to himself and figures his wallet will turn up somewhere. It always does. But what if he calls to say it's over? The thought catches him by surprise. That's probably what will happen. Truth is, love doesn't triumph, and our fears get the best of us, always. That's why fairy tales are written, to escape the endless disappointments and heartaches of real life. Regardless of what you think, your love isn't strong enough, and when he calls, it's only to tell you it's over, for good, because he won't let you break his heart again. David drowns the thoughts by singing louder and louder. Then he stops suddenly when he sees a park he half recognizes. It resembles a park where he and Tristan used to sit on a bench and people watch all day. He enters the gates, and for a moment he hears Tristan's voice singing with him. He stops, looks around, but doesn't see anything through thick, slanting sheets of rain. David continues through slumbering bushes and sagging flowers under a thick canopy dripping and pit-pattering with rain. He walks ahead until he hears a soft whisper. No more bullshit. He turns to face Tristan. He rubs his puffy eyes and stares with disbelief. Tristan laughs. Only you could massacre a line like that. It can't be. It's impossible. David narrows his gaze on Tristan's silhouette. He must have somehow disembarked the plane. Or maybe he never boarded in the first place. He doesn't really understand what's happening. But he knows better than to overthink his luck. David runs to embrace Tristan, but just as soon as he touches him, he withers away like a dead flower. With a gasp, David drops to his knees, hopelessly trying to catch the falling petals that melt in his hands and drip through his fingers into a gathering fog. He barely has time to register what's happening when he hears footsteps squelching in the mud and water all around him. He looks up slowly to see every single bully, abuser, and shithead he ever took down advancing on him. His gut reaction is to pinch himself, yet nothing happens when he does. With a deep sigh of resignation, David rises to his feet, lifts his chin, and throws himself into the fray. He tackles and swings and kicks until he's the last man standing, with slithering tendrils of black fog pulling him down into a world of darkness, untouched by the light of love.